Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Today marks the 14th anniversary of the death of Pope John Paul II. The Holy Father died on Saturday, 2nd of April 2005 at 9:37 p.m. The first Polish Pope, he was also the first non-Italian Pope in 400 years when he was elected in 1978. The third longest-serving Pope in history, he was canonised by the current Pope, Pope Francis, in 2014.
John Paul II was elected Pope on October 16, 1978, as the 264th successor to St. Peter. He was the first non-Italian Pope since 1523, as well as the first Slavic Pope in history. Over the course of his pontificate, the Holy Father completed 104 papal visits, including 8 to Poland. Over 300 million people converted to Catholicism during his time as the Pope. His pontificate lasted almost 27 years, which made him the third longest reigning Pope after St. Peter and Pius IX. Saint John Paul II died on April 2, 2005, aged 84. His funeral took place on April 8th. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the next Pope later known as Benedict XVI, celebrated the funeral mass, which was attended by several 100,000 people, including 300,000 Poles. This was the biggest funeral ceremony in world history. John Paul II was buried in the Vatican crypt. In 2011 he was beatified, and in 2014 he became a saint. During an evening vigil on Piłsudski Square, citizens of Warsaw will be able to listen to parts of the Pope's homilies and pieces sung by the choir of Center for the Thought of John Paul II. The Archbishop of Warsaw, Kazimierz Nyć, confirmed his presence at the event.
According to the Polish daily Super Express, the Polish government is working on a plan to exclude former communist apparatchiks from receiving one additional month's pension payment each year. This extra pension benefit is one of the Law and Justice government's proposals to help Polish pensioners with everyday expenses. The amount of pension received by retired communist functionaries is usually at the upper level, so it has been decided that they do not need the additional payment.
The 13th pension was supposed to be for all retirees, irrespective of income. Now, as reported by Super Express, the government is considering changes as a result of which the allowance may not be paid to retired judges and prosecutors from the communist era, as well as former officers of the communist security apparatus. It's very risky and, unfortunately, in my opinion, nothing will pan out, because under the previous regulation there is no full catalogue of functions subject to all these exclusions. Throwing everyone into one pot is very unfair. The possible new rules would in fact include retirees who are already receiving lower pensions since October 1st, 2017, on the basis of the Anti-Communist Functionaries Act. Those changes caused numerous protests at the time. We might witness some protests as we had after the previous regulations. We have some pending lawsuits regarding the previous law, and the courts take matters on a case-by-case basis. All this would be a logical consequence of the previous changes and lowering the pension benefits to the communist secret police functionaries. Publicist Tadeusz Kościuszko would go much deeper in removing former communist secret police functionaries from the 13th pension entitlement. My wish would be that all of them would lose their special retirement benefits. So far, only functionaries of communist secret police and communist secret informants are subject to that law, but where are the communist military personnel? Where are the communist judges? Where are the Stalinist prosecutors? They made bogus accusations about people, they served horrible punishment. The retired judges and prosecutors might have the feeling of being singled out, saying that their military colleagues did not lose their benefits. The first reading of the draft regarding the additional pensions was initially planned for Tuesday at the Parliament's Social and Family Policy Committee, but this was postponed to Wednesday. Perhaps it is due to changes that are to be made to it.
The Polish government discussed possible changes to the Sunday trading ban today. It seems that any changes to the ban, which appears not to have benefited small shops at the expense of large stores, as had originally been hoped, will not be introduced before the autumn. Alexander Zajecka has more.
Politicians from the opposition parties have demanded changes be made concerning the Sunday trading ban, claiming that the restriction hasn't helped smaller stores and has made shopping more difficult for Poles. They also propose different solutions, such as a new law guaranteeing 2 days of work for grocery store employees or simply higher salaries for those who work on Sundays. On the other hand, MPs from the Cookies 15 movement argue that it's the citizens who should decide, through a referendum, whether Sundays should be free from work. Meanwhile, politicians from the ruling Law and Justice Party are yet to give a definite statement concerning the Sunday trading ban, saying that the matter needs to be carefully analyzed first. First of all, 35,000 college students can no longer work on Sundays. Secondly, it's not true that such a ban is predominant in Europe. It's only present in Germany and Austria. The fact that they haven't made the report on the Sunday trading ban public means that it's probably unfavorable for the government. That's what I think, since the report will be made public in autumn, so after the parliamentary elections. And we know that this government likes to gloat about its achievements. But then again, it's just speculation. I think it's first of all the citizens' business whether they want free Sundays or not. If they don't, then the government should accept it and act accordingly. Our politicians think that every decision they make is a good one, but we should let the people decide for themselves. The matter is much more complicated than it seems. If the government acted merely upon what people think to be true, without any analysis, it would be unprofessional, so please give us some time. The full report on the economic influence of the Sunday trading ban will be published in autumn. Until then, as announced by the Minister of Enterprise and Technology, Jadwiga Emilewicz, the government will be analyzing the economic situation and the public opinion regarding the issue.
The national emergency on the United States-Mexican border, caused by the growing number of immigrants trying to cross into the United States, is deepening. Worst hit is the border town of El Paso, which has taken in more than 15,000 immigrants in recent weeks. It is estimated that 100,000 migrants crossed the US-Mexican border in March, the highest figure since the early 2000s.
The number of migrants trying to cross into the US has increased sharply in recent months. The two main points of entry are in Tijuana, across the border from San Diego, and Ciudad Juarez, bordering with El Paso. Representatives of the US Border Patrol are calling for the law to be changed, as the sheer number of fresh arrivals currently forces them to catch and release illegal migrants into the US. Look, this is the reality. There are large numbers of people that are being detained. The majority are people from Central America, from unaccompanied children to families. This is creating a bottleneck and a crisis to a certain point. The Border Patrol is at the point of releasing people into our communities precisely because we can't handle it anymore. The message here and what we're asking for is that the United States Congress acts and changes the laws so we don't have to contend with this. US President Donald Trump has responded to the crisis by announcing that he will close the border unless Mexico starts cooperating on immigration with the US authorities.
Mexico is doing very well because of the United States, and frankly, they have to stop the illegal immigration. We've run out of room. We have this ridiculous catch and release program where you catch them and then you're supposed to release them. And you release them into our country. And we've been very, very tough. And the Border Patrol has been incredible, I have to tell you. The people in the Border Patrol, the job they do is unbelievable. ICE, the same thing, and law enforcement. But Mexico is going to have to do something, otherwise I'm closing the border.
Many Mexican citizens are unnerved by the situation and argue that the massive influx of Central American and Caribbean migrants has a negative impact on their daily lives. We are being affected. I don't know why the migrants have come, they just come to bother us. Let us work and live our lives peacefully because they are not doing things as they should be done. Even criminals are coming. It's not good what they are doing, and Trump is right to close the border to those people. But we Mexicans will be affected, and that is not fair. In recent years, there has been a shift in border crossings from mainly single adult Mexicans trying to evade capture to Central American families and unaccompanied minors turning themselves in to border agents to seek asylum. Because of the limits on how long children can be held in detention, most families are released to pursue their claims in US immigration courts, a process that can take years.
That's it from the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
I'm Aleksandra Zarzycka and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. A cold night across the country with temperatures ranging between -2 degrees in Zielona Góra to 2 degrees in Katowice and Kraków. This night temperature below zero is expected in central and on northern Poland as well. Sky will be clear in the whole country. And now over to tomorrow. It will be a bright day. Plenty of sunlight will appear all over Poland. It will be a breezy day, but wind note will be gusty. Rainfall will occur only around Szczecin, Poznań and Zielona Góra. The temperature will range from 12 degrees on the east to 18 degrees in Kraków and Katowice. Let's see the forecast for the following 3 days. On Thursday, pressure will drop, a maximum 18 degrees on the west and a minimum 30 on the northeast. On Friday, temperature will range from 14 to 18 degrees. We don't expect any rainfall that day. On Saturday, in most regions, sky will be an overcast. Showers are expecting in the central and northeastern Poland. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Tonight our guest is Ivo Bender of EWTN. Sir, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, thank you.
And you are representing a Catholic network that broadcasts conservative religious content all over Europe.
Well, I have the honor of representing Eternal Word television network, excuse me, which it is it is by far the largest Catholic television network in the world. So it's not just Europe; it is well over 150 countries around the world.
The numbers are impressive. Yet the mainstream media in Europe are, to say mildest, they are leftists, and yet you are building a television that's directed to the few dying out Christians here on the continent?
I don't think that the Christians are dying out. In fact, I can give you several examples that, you know, the image of what's going on that we tend to receive from mainstream media is not exactly corresponding to reality. Last year we started operations in the country of Sweden, for instance, which officially has probably about 100,000 Catholics. However, there is obviously enough people to watch it and who are interested in it, and also just to take Sweden as an example, we think of it as the ultimate liberal paradise, which has relegated religion to complete margins.
At least Christian religion, so to be precise.
Well, of course, but 2 years ago, the Corpus Christi procession in Stockholm, which is a very important Catholic holiday, gathered 600 people. Last year, it was 900 people. So
okay.
we'll see
how many of them Poles?
Probably no more than 10%. It is a very, I mean, you know, the church is universal. So if you go, again, if we use the example of Sweden, if you go to Sunday Mass in the Stockholm Cathedral, which will be presided by the newly created cardinal, because the Bishop of Stockholm is the first ever cardinal from Sweden, you'll have people from literally all over the world, including native Swedes.
Okay.
So you have Croats, you have people from Latin America, you have Poles, you have Filipinos, you have Chinese, you have people from various countries of Africa, you have refugees from Syria, you have refugees from Iraq who are Eastern Rite Catholic Christians. So if you want to see universal church, go to Stockholm Cathedral.
Okay, well, that's very good news that after the Reformation, 500 years, there is again a Catholic bishop consecrated in Stockholm.
In fact, since Reformation, he's the first Swede to be the Bishop of Stockholm and of all Sweden, because Sweden has one bishop. But he also was made cardinal 2 years ago. So
that's fantastic news.
That's pretty good news.
Let us say about challenges that of creating the Catholic television in Europe.
Well, of course.
First of all, this is English language, and the Europeans, apart from Britons, Irish, and perhaps people in Malta, are not native speakers in
Yes,
English.
so just to give a bit of background, EWTN was created in 1981 by a cloistered nun in Alabama, Mother Angelica, which obviously made absolutely no sense. Alabama probably has about 3% Catholic population. And of course, cloistered nun means a nun who does not leave the monastery. So obviously, such a person
Very
was
unlikely person for a TV personality, so to speak.
Not to mention to create a network that covers literally all of the world. So you know, we're sort of used to challenges, and just sort of symbolically, EWTN was launched 2 weeks after MTV. So I think that was an interesting.
And you are growing and MTV is declining.
That is very true. That is very true. And I think in a sense we don't have any competition because very few people are insane enough to start an international Catholic network. So language, of course, it started in English, but there is since then a Spanish version in Latin America and also in the US, very popular. We have a German version, we have Ukrainian version. And since last year, we have a Hungarian language version, a Swedish language version, and a Polish language version.
No
It's
Latin.
possible.
No Latin still.
I understand that there is a radio station in Finland that
that's
broadcasts in
correct, yes.
Latin. But every once in a while, we do show the Mass
I've
in
heard
Latin.
it over past 30 years, but I never tune into the actual station.
Well, you know, who knows? Who knows what future holds for us? But you know, we don't run away from Latin. You know, it does appear every once in a while in our shows.
Okay, so we have language versions and let's say about the programming.
Well, the programming is very Catholic. So it contains daily Mass as a sort of pillar. And in fact, the Mass transmitted from, in case of the large stations, transmitted from the chapel in Irondale, Alabama, outside of Birmingham. In Poland, we have the daily Mass from Niepokalanów, from the original chapel built by Saint Maximilian. And this is very auspicious because you got me a mug of coffee with the face of Saint Maximilian. Actually, if it wasn't for the Second World War, Saint Maximilian would have started the first Catholic TV station. He was actually researching this new thing called television in Germany, actually, and they killed him. But anyway, so the pillar is, of course, the Holy Mass. There are various devotions, prayers, programs explaining the faith. That's very, very important because very often we take the articles of faith for granted. We don't really think about it. If we're lucky to be catechized as children, we very often, you know, forget. So it's a refresher course. And
right.
Interestingly, also one of the most viewed programs is called The Journey Home, which is a feature run by a former Protestant who converted to Catholicism, who meets with people who either converted to Catholicism or who left the church and came back. And they tell the stories of their journey home. And this show has been running now for, 20 years. And there are those, truly edifying stories of personal conversion, which are very, very powerful. Plus, of course, all kinds of youth programming. There is also children's programming. There is feature films, historical. For instance, there is EWTN produced a very beautiful period film about Saint Kateri, the first American Indian woman who was canonized in the 17th century. She was living in this. She was an Iroquois Indian in the 17th century borderlands between today's Canada and the U.S. So all kinds of programming, but always sticking with the Catholic Church, being very faithful to the eternal Word, because that's the mission. Eternal Word Television Network.
And that's the very interesting proposition and offer, Catholic television. Ivo Bender, thank you very much for
My pleasure.
participating in this show. And you have seen Poland Daily Business.
I'm Aleksandra Zarzycka and welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. It will be a bright day, plenty of sunlight will appear all over Poland. It will be a breezy day, but wind note will be gusty. Rainfall will occur only around Szczecin, Poznań and Zielona Góra. The temperature will range from 12 degrees on the east to 18 degrees in Kraków and Katowice. And now let's see tomorrow's forecast for the continent. The rain will dominate on the northeastern Europe. In Moscow, some snowfall is expected. In Scandinavia, temperature will range from 4 degrees in Helsinki to 15 in Stockholm. Sunny weather and 18 degrees in Rome, but Lisbon will enjoy at the highest temperature on the continent, 22 degrees. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
The Scouting Association of the Polish Republic was founded on the 12th of February in 1989. At present, the Scouting Association has over 15,000 members. It is an associate member of the Confederation of European Scouts. The Scouting Association is a public benefit organization that was established in 1989. It aims to continue the traditions and educational thought of several generations of Polish Scouts. The roots of the ZHR, or the Scouting Association, date back to 1980, when the Circle of Scouting Instructors was created. Andrzej Małkowski gathered together independent environmental scouts and instructors. The Scouting Association of the Republic is a community of friends, children, youth, and adults who, based on Christian values, through scout leaders, work on themselves to help others. They seek adventure and pursue other elements of the scouting life that educate a person to find a life full of happiness, to be responsible for oneself and for one's fellow citizens, and to take on the challenges of the modern world.
Let's just sort of move on to your own sort of personal story then, with regard to, you've got a couple of brothers who are part of the scouting movement. Tell us a little something about them.
They are amazing. I basically love my brothers, really. They're one of the coolest person I ever know. I got two younger brothers. One of them is 2 years younger, and second one is 8 years younger. And they are both in the same scout team I belonged to. I was the leader of this group, and they were members. And now one of them, I left this scout group from my younger brother, and he's now the leader of it. And my second younger brother is the leader of the small team, because in all you got a scout teams, scout groups, and inside all of them, and this group has a leader that's for sure not underaged. It's 18 or older. We got the scout groups, and it works like it got a one leader, and inside this leader has 1 or 2 person helping him to manage all this group, and everybody else are connected in the smaller teams, which are called zastępy in Polish. And in these smaller groups, they have a leader, and it's what the zastępy is what I was talking about before when talking about this 14-15 years old boys that leading someone. And these are zastępy and then whole scout teams. And one of my youngest brother is chief of this smaller scout team, and my younger brother, this 2 years younger, is chief of all this group.
Okay, yeah, super. Very much a scouting family.
That's right, but I didn't expect that, because I was the first one. I'm the oldest. I joined the scouting. And then my younger brother was not very happy to be a scout for first time, but then he started to like it really very, very, very much, and now he's working. He's doing a great job, and the same with my youngest one. So only me was like enthusiast from the beginning. They're rather skeptical, but now they're amazed about it.
During Holy Mass on World Youth Day in Krakow, Pope Francis announced that Panama would be the next host for a world meeting of Scouts. A meeting in the Southern Hemisphere was a distant target for the ZHR Scouts from Poland. The president of Panama, appreciating the involvement of ZHR in medical security, invited their representatives to meet. Participation in World Youth Day on the border between the Americas, that is Panama, between North and South America, and being in Central America is a perfect place for this gathering. The entire Polish Scouting organization, in particular the Scout Volunteer Ambulance Service, are preparing themselves for this event.
A couple of things in terms of environment that I think of. One is definitely, the first thing I think about when I think of Polish Scouting is that I think of Scouting as very sort of outdoors based
That's correct.
activities, and also just think that, you know, Poland has usually quite harsh winters, and so in that sense I sort of wonder, how do the Scouts sort of fill their activities, their time during those winter months?
Yeah, of course, it's easier to get activities outdoors. During summer, we have summer camps on the outdoors, of course, under the tents, and it's everything okay. But when it comes to the winter, we're trying to do the same, basically, as much as we can. We got outdoor. We got basically every single week. We get meetings outdoors, and during summer we get them outdoors, and during winter we're doing the same. Because, you know, scouting is someone who works with the nature. It's this connection with natural environment is extremely important for all the scouting organizations, and that's the reason most of our scout groups are working all the time in the natural environment. This environment is changing. We got to adapt to it. Mm-hmm. It's different in summer, different in winter, different in spring, and also in autumn also. So we got to be prepared to all of it. We're returning to this be prepared motto. I got to underline one thing. Mm-hmm. During the winter break in schools, we got no camp like in summer. We're not outdoors fully, but we're staying inside of some buildings, and then we got our trips, all-day trips to the outdoors. But we're sleeping in more safe environment.
Okay, I see. Just lastly, then, what would you say to anybody who is watching and they would maybe considering joining Scouts? What is it that you think really Scouting could give them that maybe would make them want to join?
Adventure. Scouting is adventurous, really. If you're a boy or girl, it's like, you know, being outside, working with amazing people, meeting really friends to the rest of your days. Because I can tell it with hand on my heart that I met friends from all around the world, which I really like, which I really love work with. And these are great people, and you can meet great people, you can work with them, and that's a pleasure. But when you're joining, it's about the adventure. It's when you want to join, it's really so amazing, so many amazing things that you can't believe. I couldn't believe I will go to Panama one day, because Panama is far away. That's not the first shot there in Latin America for me. And I was just like, okay, we're going there. We're doing something because it's service and it's our scout job to do it. But I'm 23 years old almost. And that was adventure for me. If you're a girl or of 11, of 12, just joining a new group, it's amazing adventure. Joining a group with and running all day around the forest or running or learning, I don't know, survival skills kayaking all days. I don't know. There's many activities we do. So it's like adventure. Adventure is the first word.
All right, fantastic. Mr. Jakub Pajkowski, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Daily Culture.
Thank you very much. Be prepared.
Thank you, I am.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at Hotel Europejskie, one of the most expensive hotels in all of Poland. The secret to keeping such a prestigious status relies on preserving history and providing luxurious accommodation. Today we will learn more about one of the most exclusive jewels of Warsaw.
Our guest today is Mr. Ksawery Wąsowski, a direct descendant of Aleksander Przeździecki, who decided to build Warsaw's first luxury hotel of international standards in 1855. After returning to Poland from the US in the early 90s, Mr. Wąsowski has been documenting the long and interesting history of Hotel Europejski.
Let's start from the beginning of things. As I know, your great-great-grandfather made the decision to build this hotel, and I was wondering if you can give us a little bit of background and how he came to the decision.
Sure. He was a world traveler. He had been in Western Europe, various capitals, and he had seen how the hotels had been newly built in mid-19th century, and he realized that Warsaw, being the kind of center of crossroads here from what was the Russian Empire and the West, that it didn't have such a hotel. So he decided that it would need something like that. And since he had the capital to be able to fund such a place, when he came back to Warsaw, he started looking for areas where it would be possible to build such a hotel. And here on Krakowskie Przedmieście was the main thoroughfare leading from one rail station on one side of the river to the other side. Right. And since there was no railway bridge to connect, passengers had to get off and rest usually from their long journeys. So the hotel being along this tract was the perfect spot to put it, and there happened to be opportunity for real estate opening up, and so he bought the place. And over the next couple of years, along with some new compatriots who also funded this enterprise, they built the hotel.
So I would imagine that this hotel would be in a different standard as opposed to the other ones that are existing in Warsaw. Can you tell me a little bit about like the difference between the hotel here, between the ones with the other places?
Sure. A hotel as we know it today didn't really exist in the mid-19th century. Oh. These were more or less what we call maybe rooming houses, where people would come, and the building did not have all the amenities that we consider as normal for today. For instance, they didn't have a restaurant. They didn't have, let's say, a hairdresser or other shops that would be included in hotels today. These were some of the ideas that were implemented in the first grand hotels in the mid-19th century. Another detail, which is kind of odd today when you think about it, when guests came to these so-called rooming houses, they had to bring their own linens. The establishment would not provide that. So you had to bring your own sheets, your pillowcases or whatnot, your towels, and so that was the standard. So when the Hotel Europejski was built, all of that was included, right. Including baths. Many times these rooming houses didn't have baths. You would have to, for a bath, you would have to go to the bathhouse, which would be a totally separate place. So all these amenities started to be put into the one building. Right. So guests, when they came, they really did feel like they were being treated luxuriously, right. Because everything that they had to look for elsewhere or bring with themselves was in one spot.
Right, so essentially this is like the first place where everything is in a single package.
Exactly. Let's say that was the 5-star treatment back then, to have linens actually on the bed and not having to bring them with you.
Since we're going back to the beginning, let's talk about the architecture of the place and how it was built, and go into a little bit more of the detail of the construction of things. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Sure. Alexander Przezdziecki, when he was traveling, and also his relatives, the aristocracy at the time, they saw the architecture that was abroad. They were great fans of Italian architects. Many of them, for centuries really, had imported Italian architects to design either their mansions or their various buildings, or even whole towns, as in the case of Zamość. So Alexander Przezdziecki invited Henryk Marconi, an Italian architect who actually moved to Warsaw and designed many buildings in Poland. Here in the immediate vicinity of the Hotel Europejski, he designed the Towarzystwo Kredytowe on Kredytowa Street. In the Ogród Saski, the fountain that we see today, and the water tower that's in the park.
Right.
That was his designs just a couple of years before the Hotel Europejski. He was a big fan of neoclassical architecture from Rome, from Venice. So the details that we see throughout the building, the columns on the outside, the structure, the intervals of the windows and whatnot, come from various palaces in Rome, for instance, the Palazzo Farnese, or in Venice, Palazzo Corner. So some of the details, like for instance, on the one wing where you have double columns between the windows,
right,
that's precisely a copy from Palazzo Corner in Venice. So it's almost this copy-paste that he did to good effect. This was a unique building because it was a whole city block. So he designed the whole thing as one unit. It wasn't just part of a facade of a running order of other buildings.
Right.
So in that respect, it was unique.
Mm-hmm. It's not like a mix and match of things, a whole block.
Right, and also by copying, I think the copy-paste factor he did to good use, because there's a symbiosis to all these elements. They work together. The fact that the rounded corners have been designed in such a way and are incorporated as we are in this room, one of the corner rooms. It is unique and it worked very well. And when the hotel went up, let's say the first part of the opening was 1857 on January 1st, already you could see at that point this was a big improvement on any other building. It was a grand event. It was a unique thing.
Even if the part of Poland which had been partitioned by the Russian Empire was not benefiting economically from being occupied by a foreign power, Warsaw was growing rapidly by the end of the 19th century. The city's location made it serve as a hub for people traveling between cities such as Berlin, Vienna, and St. Petersburg. The need of a modern hotel for well-off travelers was increasingly growing. What kind of city is Warsaw like during the time, and what kind of activities can the guests expect to have, and what kind of social life do they enjoy?
We look back into people's memoirs and writings to see that. But Warsaw back then, as many cities, cultural life and social life was much different. There was not so many distractions as we have today. People would, let's say, take more walks. The parks were frequented more. Pastry shops, coffee shops were very popular. So the ones that appeared here in the hotel, first Conti, then Czernet, and then finally Lux, which was quite famous. they were centers of social life. Also, people loved art more, it seemed. And there were art galleries that were popping up everywhere. A very famous one, the Krwulta Gallery, opened here in 1880. And that was in a hotel for 20 years. So every Sunday, let's say after church, people would go on their stroll and they would come visit the art gallery, or they would go to the pastry and coffee shops, and they would just spend their time there.
What kind of guests frequent the hotel at the time? Are they more international or just within the realms of Warsaw and Poland as a whole?
From the records we have, there was a mix. Poles, lots of Poles came, foreigners. Warsaw was a crossroads. There was people traveling from Petersburg, Moscow to the west. Warsaw was the westernmost large city of the Russian Empire. We mustn't forget that.
Right.
And immediately to the west, we have Berlin. Onwards, we have Paris. And so there was a lot of traffic going back and forth. So Warsaw had a complete mix. And Poles from the various divided sections of Poland at that time also visited. So there was a complete mix.
Right, so essentially the place served as a hub for travelers going all sorts of directions, pretty much.
It was a hub. When you look at the railroad maps at that time, you see that pretty much all roads went through Warsaw to get to the west. There wasn't any others except far away, but you really had to go through Warsaw to get either east or west.
So this served as a very advantageous position, I would imagine.
It was, and also it was probably the most liberal of the cities in the Russian Empire, since it was closest to the west, and the Poles were never people that were to be put down or held down. They always had their independent spirit. So there was a sense of freedom that was certainly for the Russians that came, that Warsaw offered.
Hotel Europejskie has 150 years and counting of very interesting history. And the fact that the history is preserved and the personal touch of the place is what gave it the standard for the best hotel in Poland and has set the standard ever since. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. Boy, we got a good show for you. The sun is shining, and we will be going over to Praga, the district of Warsaw, which is on the eastern bank of the Vistula River. We're going to start out, though, on the Holy Cross Bridge. From there to the west, you can see the spires of the gleaming new Warsaw. All those skyscrapers, very impressive. You can also see the old town to the north and the west. And on the east, of course, old Praga. Praga exists pretty much as it has for many centuries. It was not much destroyed during World War II, and now it's a popular bohemian hangout. We're going to take you for a walk right through the center of the main part of Praga. Action starts at St. Florian's Church. We'll see a milk bar and the 5 musicians statue, and hear a very famous song, A Dream of Warsaw it's called. And it's one of my favorites. We'll stop off at the Praha Cinema. Then we'll go to the market in Praga, the largest market in Warsaw today. The old school outdoor market hasn't changed much in 30 years. So come and have a look at alternative Warsaw. It's called Praga, and it's lots of fun. This is eye candy you'll happily digest. So come along. The next few episodes, we're on the eastern bank of the Vistula in Warsaw, in Praga district. Poland Daily Travel, the best travel about Poland you've ever seen.
So it occurred to me, as we were leaving the milk bar, that we didn't talk about the statue, which is behind us over there. Yeah? We're being heckled, by the way.
Yes.
Being heckled by
history.
It's good. It's good to know that in all towns you can go to, there will be vagrants around to annoy
actors.
you. They'll be around to
Theatrical
annoy
actors.
you. You don't have to. Anyway, I feel sorry for the guy, but this is obviously his sport. So as we're walking down, what's the story of this fellow in the statue?
So it's Father Skorupko, a young priest that was engaged in the army. Remember, Poland regained its independence in 1918, but shortly after, the Bolshevik Russia decided to invade Europe and to spark the revolution around the world.
They said they were going to run right over to the English Channel.
Yes, on the body of Poland. And so Poland was only 2 years old when this gigantic war started between the young Polish army and the Soviet army, which they were around 2 million marching on, and hundreds of thousands marching on Warsaw. And the Polish army tried to stop them just on the other side of Praga.
On the other side of the Wisła, further. What was
further.
Radzymin, yeah?
In Radzymin, yes. I think it was in Radzymin that Father Skorupko. That was the most, let's say, the most hard-fought battles of that war were at Radzymin, and the Polish army was bleeding severely. And at some point, they lacked morals. This young priest stood up, took the cross, raised it, and said something like, "Who believes in God in Poland, march behind me." And he led a counterattack, which repulsed the Russians, the Soviets, to be correct. And he died during that fight. He was only like 27, so he's a martyr, a very known figure in Polish history, and I think it was worth mentioning him since we're on this square in Praga.
Uprising Square, and
yes.
Radzymin's about 25 kilometers to
the
east.
To the east, yes.
Due east, isn't it?
Yes.
It's on the road to Białystok or something.
Yes,
isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
So, but it's worth mentioning that this 1920-21 Polish-Soviet War, as it's often called.
Yes.
The operative result of that conflict is that Poland stopped the Bolshevik invasion of Western Europe.
Yes.
Because Germany was on its knees.
Yes.
Hyperinflation.
The Spartacus Revolution, just
the Communist Revolution. At the same time that Hitler was just beginning to go with his thing.
Yes.
So it was really a time of extremism and revolution. And here's Poland. But it's not the first time Poland did this, because there was also the Battle of Vienna.
Yes, exactly.
What year was that? You know.
It was 1683.
1683.
September. Yes, and it was 9/11 comes from that doesn't come from nowhere, by the way. They chose that date because it reminded it was a kind of a revenge for Vienna.
That's
symbolically.
You're talking about the 9/11 Islamic attack as revenge for the Battle of
Some people
Vienna.
argue they chose that date, September 11, because that's when the Battle of Vienna started.
Well, also interesting that the panic number in the United States is 911. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess everybody knows that now, but I'm always fascinated.
Numbers
by that.
are mythical in a lot of cultures.
Well, numerology. Certainly, Jung talks about. Carl Jung talks about numerology, and that numbers do have a certain magic because the universe is very
like the number 7
organized on a mathematical scale. So that numbers really do matter. As I had a conversation with somebody on the show recently about on my talk show, about
so I remember
artificial
very
intelligence.
good conversation, by the way.
Yeah, you were in the studio.
Yes,
it
that
was
is correct.
fascinating. So numbers are very important. That's what pure mathematics teaches you, that there's actually some kind of really coherent logic in that. But not an accident, as you said, the 9/11 date for the victory of Poland over the Ottoman Empire in 1683 in Vienna. Then we have the miracle on the Vistula, which is what we just talked about. And Mr. Skorupko, or Reverend Skorupko, or Father Skorupko was involved in that, in a very important role. So we're walking out of the streets where he would have walked. And also, it's worth knowing that when you're on this side of the river back then, the river was a great boundary for,
of course,
for
many centuries, centuries.
Because you couldn't cross that river. So you could get to Praga, you could be here, But how would you get across the river? You couldn't.
Yes.
Without a bridge. As you said in an earlier, when we were standing on the bridge in an earlier episode,
Yes.
you were talking about the pontoon bridge that they put across.
Yes.
I love this stuff. I think it's fascinating. That we're walking down these streets where so much history has happened, and we're actually in this traditionally Russian controlled part of Warsaw, and this is where the Russians stopped in World War II while the Warsaw Uprising was going on. August 1st, the start.
1944.
1944.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Wow.
one little
It's
thing, you know,
incredible.
for
Look
some...
at this old street. They would have had the carts on here and everything. Anyway, go ahead. What?
Sorry. For some historians, by the way, and geopolitics, people that are working in geopolitical fields, they say the Vistula River is actually one of the considered frontiers of Western Europe.
Wow.
It's in terms of, geopolitics, and it's probably correct because a lot of Poles are saying that this is the Russian side of Poland.
Yeah,
and
that's what, I guess I was thinking
you
that.
heard it many times,
Well, I
people
don't know if
jokingly saying it.
Did they say it?
Yeah,
Because
they say it.
I just thought I was kind of, it kind of seeemed to make sense, but perhaps I've heard it and it was
I mean,
planted.
the Vistula is just super...
It was planted in my subconscious memory. We're still being heckled. It's time to stop this episode. We are being heckled. A man is saying, "You're in Poland.
Not in Israel.
You need to speak in Polish." But we can't because the whole purpose of our program
He's just trying to help.
is to speak in English.
No, he's very helpful. He's been very helpful,
He's
right?
a very nice man. Yeah.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I can't use any of my heckling, anti-heckler stuff on him. Oh, he's telling us the car is coming.
Yeah. He's very nice.
Dziękuję panu. Dziękuję.
Thanks.
And Poland Daily Travel. Stay with us.